Welcome everyone to There and Back Again, a friend's journey. As
Good
last
job.
time, I got it wrong and somebody did not correct me, so yeah.
Well, in my defense, we had just decided right before.
That's true.
So then I questioned, what did we decide on journey? Or yeah. And
Yeah, because I said tail last time.
because
and
you
not,
said tail.
Yeah, so that was my mistake. So my name is Father Jared, the Master of Mediocrity, and this is Grace Weatherhead. So sorry, I don't have a superlative for you, so I apologize. So
I don't either. You didn't give me a heads up to come up with one either.
that's
okay.
true. Well, I just kind of came up with that one. I'm sorry. So
That's okay.
Yeah, I wasn't like plotting that one for a long time. It was
Yeah.
just one that came to mind. So because
Nice.
it's like an oxymoron, so Master of Mediocrity.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Wow.
yeah,
Deep
dope. I'm sorry.
Deep, dope, awesome sauce.
Yeah. Sorry. That's an inside joke that will not be included in this episode that we just talked about. But yes, so Grace, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. You know, the time change has me a little bit messed up.
I know.
If I wasn't messed up enough before, time change has.
What is up with the self-deprecating humor?
I'm spending too much time with you.
That's fair.
That's my best honest answer.
Yes,
yeah.
that's true. But
Yeah.
no, that was just
Well, yeah. Yeah, so time change has got me a little bit messed up. Like,
Yeah.
first night, it was pretty great because gained an extra hour of sleep.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, my body was ready to get up.
Yes.
And so, like, for an hour, I was just kind of, like, waking up, looking at the clock. And
Yeah.
I'm still doing it. Like, I woke up today, and I was like, why the heck am I awake? Time change. Why we
Yeah.
gotta do the time change?
that's a good question. That is
Yeah. I figured you'd have an answer because, like, there's some, like, farming type
yeah, so
reasons.
so there's like farming reasons, which people have claimed that, but I actually don't know the farming reasons. The only reason I've ever heard is because since working hours at a lot of offices, like it requires more light or like more electricity to be used if it's dark. So the reason for the time changes is to like utilize the light more for prime working hours. So that's the reason I've heard. I don't know. So people have mentioned farming before, but I've actually never heard a reason why. I've just heard people like blame farmers, and it's like, it's like, what are we getting blamed for? Like, what's the reason that we want the time change? I don't know. So
Interesting. So if you're a farmer out there and you have answers,
let us know.
let us know. Anyway,
Yeah.
how are you?
Yeah, time change has been rough, but I gotta say that time change was perfect timing. Oh,
Wow.
That was unintended.
Profound.
that was so profound.
Dang.
But yeah, it was. But the first night, I was like, Saturday night, didn't have anything to do, and so I was just tired, and so I went to bed at 9, which was effectively 8. I didn't wake up until like 6 o'clock the next morning, and it was amazing. So it was a great night's rest. So that was much appreciated. But it's thrown off everything else. Like you said, like at 4 o'clock, I'm like, is it time for bed? Because it feels like it's dark out already,
Yeah.
you know? And
I
so
know.
that's thrown me off a lot with, darkness setting in. But otherwise, things are good. Yeah. Everything at the parish is great. And like, just a lot of time with friends and family lately, which has been good. So working all that great stuff in that we all need to work in. So take time with your family and friends. It makes you happier. I'm actually smiling now.
Proof.
Sorry.
That's great.
Even though I just bumped my mic. So somebody will probably be horrified by my smile because about the same time I also gave it the old shoulder pound, and they'll probably their ears will be assaulted by. It'll be okay.
It will be fine.
Yeah. So
Time with family and friends. So signs of hope, you might say.
signs of hope, which in many ways leads us into today's topic. But first, we do have to start with a prayer. So do you want to lead us in prayer?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for this opportunity to reflect on the wonderful gift that is hope. we ask that you send your Holy Spirit down upon Father Jared and myself and all the viewers, all the listeners, that you may cultivate in us this great sense of hope, that we may always learn to trust in you and the divine providence that gives us hope. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father,
And the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Divine providence.
Providence.
Providence is the bomb.
The key of hope.
The key of hope.
to hope,
Interesting.
I think.
You think?
I know.
What is- you know? Fast.
Yeah. That's something I was thinking about when I was thinking about hope. Is that like divine providence, reflecting on divine providence
Yeah.
is a very important aspect of if you want to be a hopeful person.
Oh, true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. Yeah. So like the situation we find ourselves in is like meant for us in some ways. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I guess that determines what the question will be for this.
Does it?
Well, in a way. So it's a very loose connection.
connection, okay.
Very loose connection. But, you know, in many ways, the providence within the Lord of the Rings is oriented around the specific races within Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. So that does so whenever you look at them, it's always kind of fun to see like the different aspects that makes up each one. So which of like hobbits, elves, men, you know, and dwarves, you know, if you want to be an orc, you could be an orc. Cave troll, if you want to be a cave troll. But which one do you think it would? Goblin. Which I actually don't know what the difference between orc and goblin. Even like my Lord of the Rings nerddom, like at one point I knew that, but I no longer know what the difference is actually. So, yeah.
They look different in the movies.
They do.
I don't know what their biological difference is.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah. I feel like it's mentioned in The Hobbit somewhere in the book, but maybe not.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know.
Anywho.
But anyways, which of the races do you think you would be?
Oh, okay. Which one do I think I would be, or which one would I want to be? Or can
Which one? Well, you can say both.
Okay. Oh, man. Okay. So it's definitely narrowed down to two. I'll just tell you that. So elf
Yeah.
or hobbit.
Yes.
I don't really have a desire for any of the other ones. Which I should probably apologize right now. There's going to be some coughing in this episode.
Yes.
There's only so much editing capabilities I have. Hopefully it's not too bad.
Awesome.
That was horrible. So
why Hobbit?
why? Well, I'm trying to figure out which question I'm trying to answer right now. Which of the two?
Oh, gotcha. Makes sense.
Why? Okay.
Well, because I would guess that Hobbit's one that you feel like you probably are, but elf is something you would want to be. Is that right? Or is it the other way around?
I think that's correct. Yeah. I also would want to be a hobbit too.
That's true.
But
And there's some similarities between the two as well. So
okay. So let's just go with I am a hobbit. Because like I would like to say that I value simplicity in similar ways that they do. And just like the simplicity of embracing, I don't know.
yeah, and home.
And home.
I think like home's a big thing for you.
Oh yeah, I'm a homebody.
And so and that's what hobbits are all about is home. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, yeah, and there's like a real draw and attraction like to their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so that's probably a reflection of something that I actually
Yeah.
am or should be.
Yeah.
And then would want to be an elf because, like surface level, like they're just beautiful.
Yeah.
Like they're beautiful and they're very like majestic.
Yes.
And like they just glow. But like I know very little about elves, but one thing I do know is like their healing powers. So awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. It's like I think about Arwen, who I would like to talk a little bit about at
Yeah.
some point in this episode. And
We'll get to it. I promise.
I know. I know.
We'll make a space for it. I
Yeah,
promise,
we'll make
Grace.
a space. But like, yeah, even when she is, like her ability to
Yeah.
heal
Yeah.
Frodo and is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And like Legolas is just like, even like when he's fighting, he's just like so graceful. He's
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
know, and it's just,
And even like that he can walk on top of the snow. Like, I don't know if you noticed that in the Fellowship.
okay, I don't think I ever did until you mentioned it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, because they're so light footed that, yeah, they can walk on the snow. So yeah, it's kind of a cool ability. Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because as I was thinking about that question for myself, I was like, I feel like Grace would probably fall into one of those two things, that there's things within you that I see within both. So like we mentioned with the hobbits, also with the barefooting thing. So
Yes, bare feet.
bare feet. So that's also another thing in there. But even like, yeah, kind of the integrity and nobility of the elves. Yeah, it's something that, yeah, we can also see, I think, in Grace as well. So yeah, which is awesome. So, and that's kind of funny because as I was thinking about myself, it's like, I would want to be an elf too, because I would be pretty awesome. But if I'm honest about what I probably am, it's like, really, I probably fall into like the opposite two, which would be dwarves and men.
Really?
Well,
Why?
because like I love, so like I was a welder before I went to seminary, so I love metalworking, trying to get into blacksmithing right now. So it's like, that's the dwarves thing, you know, that's their jam.
Yeah,
So
true.
yeah. So they love that. And also like, I like overcast weather. I like dark quite a bit. And so like, I can also identify with like burrowing deep under the ground and like wanting to explore in that way.
That's awesome.
Just like, and also just like, even like how my mind works is like, I like to mine for like little nuggets of like wisdom. And so there's like something that I identify with, like the dwarves delving underneath mountains and like mining for jewels in the physical sense. But I think even just the way that my mind works is I'm always trying to mine to find like the diamond in the rough, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's how my mind oftentimes works. But then men, because I do love that line in the extended version of the Fellowship where Boromir's like, yes, there's frailty, yes, there's weakness, but there's honor and courage to be found in men also. And that's, I can identify with that duality, you know, just within myself of like, there's a lot of frailty and there's like weakness of all sorts. But at the same time, the Lord reveals to me over time also like the goodness that's within me. And so, yeah, so I think for that reason, both of them, and also I, you know, like I don't ever see dwarves or men without shoes, and you know, so I love to wear shoes in opposition to the hobbits of the worlds, you know. So,
Yeah.
so on a very superficial level, it's also that, and also I guess the one thing that for dwarves I can't identify with is the beard, though. So too, so I have a
It's
strong
true.
aversion to beard. So
Yeah.
little known fact about me.
Yeah.
Actually, if you know me, you probably know that. So
Yeah. Yeah. You
Yeah.
may have noticed he never has a beard.
yes, never. Yeah. So yeah,
Interesting. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I really like the mining analogy. That's very true.
yeah,
From what I know about you, mining for truth and wisdom,
yeah.
plunging into the depths
Plunging into the depths.
of the earth.
Yes. Just hopefully I don't awaken a Balrog. So.
I was going to say it's dangerous work.
Yes, it is. But then we just need to get Gandalf in there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah. Anything else you want to say about your reason? I realized I kind of cut you off there, so I apologize.
Oh, no. I was ready to ask you.
Okay.
I don't think so. That's pretty much all I've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that leads then into seeing those four races. It's interesting that 3 of them are actually beginning to diminish in Lord of the Rings, and men are beginning to come forward. So that's actually something that's kind of seen it. Oh. Because the elves are like beginning to go into the west. Hobbits are eventually like become more and more unseen, and dwarves are even dwindling. They used to have realms all over the place, and now they're like in the Lonely Mountain, and that's about it. So you see them also diminishing, and then men are beginning to inherit the land, so to speak. So that's kind of like, so it's kind of a weird topic within Lord of the Rings that there's hope, because Tolkien himself had a very dour, bad view of history. He thought everything was getting worse, Which kind of makes sense because, I mean, he was a World War One vet. Mm-hmm. And then also lived through World War II. And it, like, justifiably so, like, tens of millions dead in one and then hundreds of millions of dead in, like, the second conflict. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, oh, yeah, like, I get where he's picking that up.
Yeah, if life has taught me anything, it's that it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah. And so, like, that's his view of history.
Yeah.
And so it's weird to think that then there's like a theology or a mythology of hope that runs throughout Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. But it does. And I think also that it's not merely like a surface level thing, like more and more people die in bigger and bigger conflicts.
Yeah.
Because today we'd be like, well, like we're way better than, you know, it's 2021. Like that's kind of like one of those phrases that people always throw around. Like, like it's supposed to be a justification. Like, come on, it's 2021. Mm-hmm. But his thought is that not so much that even technology's not progressing or something like that. His idea is morally and spiritually, like we're devolving as time goes on, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. But there are little beacons of hope kind of embedded. And so, so I think that's where, to use the mining analogy again. So if we want to go back to what we just talked about, like you kind of have to mine in Lord of the Rings if you don't know the end. You have to mine in Lord of the Rings to really find it throughout the story. But it is throughout the story, even if it would seem that if you've never read the story before, you would not see hope until probably the very end. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So what are some of those, some of your favorite beacons of hope?
Favorite beacons of hope?
Yeah, or moments of...
I think there's, oh my gosh, I need to look at this. So it's kind of here it is. Like Gandalf says there was never much hope, only a fool's hope. Like I believe it was Pippin, because Pippin's the very impetuous one. That's in Minas Tirith. And so he like states that there, but then I realized that whenever I was watching that clip, I was also reminded of a line that he says in The Fellowship of the Ring. It goes like this, to where he's able to find hope in the midst of what is like a dire situation just because of the nature of evil. Mm-hmm. He says, Sauron is in great fear, not knowing what mighty one may suddenly appear wielding the ring and assailing him with war, seeking to cast him down and take his place. That we should wish to cast him down and have no one in his place is not a thought that occurs into his mind. That we should try to destroy the ring itself has not entered into his darkest dream. And why I think that's like a little beacon of hope is he's like, and that made me think of the quote from Pope Benedict. So there's like a list of quotes that just made me think of right in a row from Pope Benedict from his Spe Salve, which is, those who hope live differently. And even Gandalf's point there is, because we hope for like a better tomorrow, not by power, but simply by the desire to do good, that we have hope because Sauron would never imagine that like a small group of people would set out to destroy the ring. Like that's not what he think it would ever be used for.
Yeah.
He imagines that someone's going to like take the ring and use it against him. So the thought that somebody like as tiny as a hobbit's going to come has not even entered into like his thought process, because he can't think that way.
Yeah.
Because evil can't think in the same way that good does. And so hope itself is found within like the idea of hope, because then people live differently. If you hope, then you live in a different manner, and you don't live by the same standards as the world. You don't try to plot. You don't try to like manipulate, steal, all those kind of things that people try to do to gain power, to do good through evil means. You simply do good and hope that that's enough.
Yeah.
So like that little line there is just a beacon of hope, because then you see it played out in their actions, and it explains why they take the path they do.
Yeah.
And don't like say like Elrond wield the ring and like destroy him, you know, like.
Right.
So, or Galadriel, you know.
Yeah. That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mind was like trying to process that. Do you think that's like just a reflection of some of the pride of evil? Is that like, well, if anyone's going to be against, so like in Sauron's view, like if anyone's going to be against me, they're going to be using the ring.
If they have the ring, they're going to use it.
Yeah, because the ring is the everything.
Yes.
And so there's just like this pride of like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of like who wouldn't want power.
Right.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want what I have?
Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting.
Who doesn't want to dominate everyone else as I would? Mm-hmm. And that even, I think, plays out. There's people who actually claim that even like Mother Teresa, she was actually being selfish by her good works.
Fascinating.
So there's like people who have like this kind of philosophy that everyone's selfish in their own way. Mm-hmm. And that even Mother Teresa did it for like her own self-gratification. And so you can even see that like in a way, and it's not necessarily to say that that philosopher is necessarily evil, but it is like an evil thought that it's like
Right.
everybody has to like, everybody does stuff for selfish reasons. It's pride. She's doing it because of pride.
Yeah.
But hope lives differently. Mm-hmm. So it's just like a completely different thought process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So there's like one beacon of like, well, yeah, as we were talking beforehand, like I love words. And so like some of the words that Gandalf shared was like, oh my gosh, that's deep stuff. Like I love that. So
Yeah.
So what about you? What's
Great question. I mean, this is like, what do I want to say? Like a maybe overstated, overemphasized, but also it can't really be overemphasized. Quote from Gandalf when he's talking to Frodo in Moria.
Yeah.
And he says that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you were also meant to have it.
Yeah.
And that is an encouraging thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that. Sorry, my voice is leaving me.
Providence.
Providence.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, no,
Because-
that quote.
Yeah.
Not your cough.
It's like,
Yeah, Grace's cough is Providence, and then also my cough is Providence. So sorry, that was bad timing.
I thought you were saying that my voice leaving me was Providence
Oh,
because
no.
I don't have much to say. Okay.
Okay, no, that would have been a great burn, but I did
It
not think
would
of
have.
that. It would have, but dang it, I can't take credit for it.
No,
so.
you cannot.
Oh, dang it.
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did you say? Providence.
Providence.
Providence. Yeah, that Providence played this all
Yeah.
out and set out the who's and the what's for a reason.
But it seemed like the encouraging thought part that kind of struck you. Is there a reason why?
I think he's just kind of like, so how do I want to say this? I think like he's just kind of like saying, kind of like laying out Providence, but then just like flat out saying it's encouraging.
Yeah.
Like in case you aren't there, in case you aren't like caught up to speed, this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And you should be encouraged by this.
Yeah.
Like, cause I imagine like Frodo's wheels were turning.
Yes.
You know, when he was like hearing these words and like, okay, like what does that mean? What does that mean? And
Yeah.
that is an encouraging thought, just so you know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and it's interesting that right before that what starts that whole kind of spiel from Gandalf is like, I wish none of this had happened. Mm-hmm. I wish the ring had never come to me.
yeah. So he's already kind of in this place of,
So he's
Despair.
looking at what's happened to him with having the ring as negative,
yeah.
and it's like a woe is me moment. Mm-hmm. And then Gandalf tries to show him that there's perhaps something encouraging that it's fallen to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. For a very specific reason.
Yeah.
And I think it's also just interesting, like this happens, like think about the setting of this, like this was in Moria.
Yeah.
In a very dark
Dark setting.
setting. And then it's just like this, as we've been saying, like a beacon of hope
Yeah.
in this dark place. And there are moments like that sprinkled throughout.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had a random thought about that they are going through Moria, and it comes out in the movie, but in the book, basically they're like Gandalf's staff is barely light enough for him to see. Basically, no one else can actually see what's to like their right or their left more than a few feet. Like it's so dim. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the Israelites being led through, through the the Red Sea, out of Egypt through the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just sorry.
Yeah.
A little bit of biblical imagery there that maybe Tolkien didn't intend, but yeah.
Yeah. But nevertheless.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because it's like, hope requires a certain amount of trust too.
Yeah.
Like if you can't hardly see in front of you,
Yeah.
you got to trust that
Yeah.
you're not going to fall through the cracks when you take your next step.
Yeah. And even like the line from John 1, which is like among, like the whole thing is among my favorite, like the word became flesh, but also at the end it says, a light shines in the darkness and the darkness does not overcome it. And yeah, and that's kind of hope in a nutshell. Like everything can seem really bad. Again, Tolkien actually just remembered, he calls history the long defeat.
Nice. Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's like really intense. Yeah.
That is extremely intense.
Yeah. So, that's sweet.
Interesting.
What else? What's another beacon? I talked forever about mine, so you need to have another one.
Okay.
Any specific people, maybe?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Grace has been looking forward to talking about this forever.
I
and she almost
have.
forgot. So.
I did, and wow, okay. So I'm going to try to go about this in an organized fashion. So as promised in the first episode, I know you've all been on the edge of your seat.
Yes. Can't wait. I can't wait.
Wait, why does Grace love Arwen? But we mentioned Arwen and said
Yeah.
talk about it in an upcoming episode. In the next one, I think is what we said. And I kind of realized as I was reflecting about her character and like the specific nuances of her character that I love have to do with hope.
Yeah.
Like very directly. And so I'm going to talk about why I love her.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Because she's a beacon of hope. I mean, a figure
She-
can be a beacon of hope, right?
Yes. She's a
Yeah.
beacon of hope.
Yeah.
And I guess first, like, thing I should state is I only know movie Arwen.
Yeah.
I do not know book Arwen. Now, I've heard that book Arwen is not that all that great, or maybe she's not as significant of a character. Can you confirm or deny that?
So she doesn't play like the same roles that she does. So like in terms of prominence, it's a different, like it's like there's a different character who like brings Frodo to Rivendell, a different elf.
Okay.
And she doesn't like order the sword to be brought, but she plays a hefty role. Like it's clear that that's like who Aragorn. So in a way, I actually think she like, and Peter Jackson tries to do that because it's a film. But like she plays obviously a huge role in like Aragorn's character throughout the book. So even though she shows up a little bit in Rivendell and then she shows up at the very end of the books, but she does not play as a hefty a role like as a character, except for in the mind of Aragorn,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Okay.
So she's more prominent in a way because you realize this is like what he's waiting for. Because there's even this scene in the book that's not like played out to where Galadriel's like staring into the souls of essentially like the eyes of everybody. And she's like basically even telling them what they're hoping for, what their like the deepest desire of their heart is. And Sam's like the only one who says it, like that he just wants to go back to the Shire essentially. But it's also suggested that Aragorn and Legolas are like the only two who don't look away. And it's because, and it's like revealed that that's because Aragorn is hoping to obtain Arwen after his labors are done. So in a way, she plays a much more prominent role, but it's not as significant, like in like screen time, so to speak.
Okay.
Or book time, if that makes sense.
So she kind of exists more in Aragorn's mind. Like she's real.
She's real, and like you
But
meet her in Rivendell.
But she's not as active.
She's not as active.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, then that's okay.
Yes.
And yeah. So, okay. Interesting.
But I think Peter Jackson did a good job of trying to portray that in the best way he could
Okay.
in the movie. So I'm satisfied with the way that he tried to do it in the book, in the movie.
Okay, that's good to hear because I feel like from the things I've heard, it's like movie Arwen and book Arwen are different people.
In a way, but I guess I would disagree that Peter Jackson did a bad job of portraying her.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Cool. Because I like movie Arwen.
Go for it. But explain why. Okay. Yeah.
How many times will she say it before she says why?
Yeah.
So I've already kind of talked about like elves and just like in
Yeah.
general. So I'm kind of going to like talk about the more general things and then the more specific things. But so yeah, elves, they're beautiful, majestic, graceful, and they're healers, which
Yes.
is really beautiful. And then like there's this like virtue in Arwen, which I've mentioned briefly, but with her like being able to heal Frodo, there's this moment of like being self-sacrificial, like when she realizes that he is fading when they're on their way to, and like they just like, I think they like get off the horse and she's holding him and she just starts weeping, which by the way, am I right or am I right?
Tell me why you're right.
Like if you like took like a screenshot of that moment right there, does it resemble like the Pieta?
Oh, that's true. I never would have thought of that. That does. That's good. Yeah,
Okay.
That's awesome.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Yeah.
And so that's happening. He's pretty much dying in her lap and she's just like looking down and she's crying. But then there's this moment of like what we can like translate to as a prayer, where she's like, whatever grace was given to me, like let it pass to him. Like I give it up. Don't need it anymore. Like pretty much I'll die for this guy.
Yeah.
And so it's just like this moment of like, wow, she's willing to give up her life, which is very Christ-like.
Yes, it is.
So that's a beautiful aspect of her character. And then like the main thing is her relationship with Aragorn and what that does and what that is. And mostly like she gives him hope.
Yeah.
And I think that it's this beautiful, beautiful representation of like that she is a wonderful representation of authentic femininity.
Yeah.
And like the role that femininity plays, and I just think it's beautiful. So like,
and in comparison to like what is in many ways like idyllic masculinity in Aragorn, who is like very, very tough, but also like has his own, like we talked about with Boromir last time, like a great sensitivity as well. So sorry.
No, you're
so
good.
It's like balancing. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's great.
Super complimentary.
Yeah.
And just like, I think like one of the main things about the relationship that strikes me is that Aragorn is like so much like on the brink of despair for a long time. And he's like, he pretty much knows what he needs to do, but like he's terrified to death and it's like kind of paralyzing him that he can't do it. He thinks he can't because of X, Y, or Z.
Sure.
And how like all the millions of ways he's like incompetent.
Yeah.
Okay. And then enter Arwen.
Yeah.
And she basically draws those fears out of him and has this wonderful ability to speak truth to his heart and say like, hold on, this is who you are.
Yeah.
And this is what you're made for. Now do it because it's really important.
Yeah.
And she does it in a way that's like firm, but also very gentle.
Yeah.
Again, wonderful representation of femininity.
Yeah.
And, so I think without her, I mean, the ring could have been destroyed, because there's a good chance Aragorn would have just like stayed back.
Yeah.
And just would have continued to be paralyzed by the fear that was in him to mess up.
Would have never taken the kingship. Like he might have guarded Frodo, but he would have never taken his rightful place without her support. Yeah.
Because he thought he couldn't do it. He thought he wasn't worth it. And she said, you can do it and you are worth it.
Yeah.
And
that's a great point. That's awesome.
Like, yeah.
And even like, as you mentioned, like even the hope, like an aspect of hope is whenever she says, like one of the things she says to him in the movies is, you're Isildur's hair, not Isildur himself. And that's always like a great reminder because we're so often prisoners of our past, of our past sins. And we allow like what we did in the past to define who we can become. And hope like tells us differently. Even though it relies on past memories, but oftentimes past memories of like, you are different than you were before. So like you can continue to be different than you were then. And so I think that, so that's like so that little line there, whenever we just said, I was like, oh yeah, that is right. Like that's a great indication of how so often we allow past sins to like even ones that are maybe not our own.
Yeah.
Like to like paralyze us and make us scared of like doing what we know we should do and have the courage to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And that she like reminds him that she's not Isildur, that he's not Isildur. He's Aragorn. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. She's just a great sign of hope, a great figure of hope. And, yeah. And just like this ability she has to draw the good out of Aragorn again, which is just beautiful and which is how it should be.
Yeah.
And like she challenges him to be courageous,
Yeah.
Which is just dope.
Yeah. Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
No, sorry. I just had like which would be like an extreme example of like femininity, but like reportedly that Spartan like women would tell like their husbands and like sons when they go off to war, like, come back with your shield or on it. Because the only way you came back without a shield is if you surrendered.
Oh.
And if you come back with your shield, which meant you were victorious, or you came back on your sword, which meant you were killed in battle.
Dead. Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah, that's intense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, and I've actually heard people talk before about like role of like women and mothers is oftentimes to like push their kids, to push like their sons, because even you hear Mary in John's Gospel, second chapter, right? Is that second chapter, Wedding at Cana? Whenever she tells him like they have no wine, and he says it is not yet my hour. That's not like it's not like him saying like it's not time yet. His hour is his crucifixion. So whenever he says that, he's like telling her like, if I do this, this begins to happen. Like, you realize that if I do what you're asking me to do right now, I'm going to the cross.
Starting the road, yeah.
So he was like very upfront with her. But that's like her role, is like as the authentic feminine figure, is like, get out there, be courageous, as he said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
a cool insight. Sorry, that's a kind of a sidetrack, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's about it. But I think like what we can draw from this is that it speaks to what friendship should be in just like the general sense of drawing the good out of one another.
But then even like what marriage should look like.
Yes. Even with marriage, and like, I think also, yes, in a particular way between spouses, that this is like you think about the relationship between Aragorn and Arwen and what it had the power to do, and what it did do. Like, married people, don't take this lightly.
Yeah.
Because seriously, like, it's big, important stuff, and can and should and was meant to be a beacon of hope to the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot then. So what is like a lesson or two that maybe young women listening in could take from Arwen, do you think? Like, maybe what are some things you want them to reflect on, or maybe to like try and implement into their own lives?
Yeah. I may have to think about this for a minute.
That's all right.
I think maybe just being willing. So the main idea is learning how to draw the good out of someone else, which is really just loving them.
Sure.
So I think being willing to do that, and if that means putting yourself in like not the most comfy situation, like that's fine, and actually that's love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love is uncomfortable.
Love is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
But worth it, by the way.
yeah,
But worth it.
definitely worth it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. Like, think about how you would want to be loved,
Yeah.
and that you want someone else to see the good in you and to cultivate it.
Yeah.
So how, like, maybe just to reflect or to pray with, how can I do that for the people in my life? Yeah. And in moments where they want to shy away from their mission, how can I call them out for that?
Yeah. Sure.
In a way that's firm but also gentle.
Yeah.
That's not super concrete. That's pretty abstract. Advice, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, maybe just to reflect on like, okay, well, how do I want to be loved?
Sure.
And how can I try to do that for,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's good. So sorry, I just wanted to I just
Yeah.
thought
I feel like I need to ponder that one a little more.
yeah, no, and I'm sure that's just good stuff for yourself, but even just in future conversation, but it was just something I had a thought of like, how do we, because in many ways, like a lot of the main characters probably have something like lessons and things that they can teach each of us, which is one of the great things about fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Something
Yeah.
else too, I think, is like, sorry. Cough break.
Yep. Intermission.
Yeah. But I think like Arwen is also like a great sign, like persistence,
Yeah.
like to be persistent.
Yeah.
Because like she could have been like, all right, I'm done here,
Yeah.
Aragorn. Like I'm
Yeah.
sick of trying to persuade you.
Yeah.
Like if you want to like just shy away, whatever, it's your life. But I've put enough energy into this relationship and I'm
Yeah.
done. No.
Yeah.
Now there's a certain place for if it's a toxic relationship, you leave.
Yes.
But
Sure.
in a good and healthy relationship, that she just shows this persistence of I'm not giving up on you because I know you wouldn't give up on me, and well, because I love you, and so I'm going to keep showing up and I'm going to keep telling you who you are and what you're made for.
And because what we can, after you've completed your labors, like what we can share together will be beautiful. Which, yeah.
Hope.
Hope. Which actually, that made me think of a quote from Spe Salve,
Ooh.
which is Pope Benedict's, so saving hope. But he says, knowing how to wait while patiently enduring trials is necessary for the believer to be able to receive what is promised. Knowing how to wait while patiently enduring trials is necessary for the believer to be able to receive what is promised.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's good.
that is good. Like, yeah, that's a great quote. And
That
so
is.
I think that's exemplified by them. Because I mean, like there could have even maybe been a temptation for them to be like, well, let's just like stay in Rivendell and we can enjoy like our life together for, at least until like Sauron's able to overpower us here,
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that could have been a temptation. Like, let's just hold out for as long as we can. But there's almost like this thought of like, no, we both need to we need to carry out our task before before this can be like justly enjoyed in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they would not have been able to fully enjoy their time together.
Yeah.
Knowing that they were supposed to be doing something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a great thought. And whenever you mentioned it, I was like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of that quote that I just like loved from.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. Yeah. And actually that is interesting because like the word for hope in Lord of the Rings, because Tolkien was a big, he loved language. And so in the Elvish language, Estelle is the word for hope. And it's like also trust. So like trust and hope are like interchangeable in his mind. So it's like trusting that like Providence is going to work this out, and that like the God figure Luvatar is like going to, in the end, like somehow reign, but he also requires like our free cooperation. but he's not going to coerce us to do so. But actually, the Elvish, like Aragorn's Elvish name is actually Estelle as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, so his name, like his Elvish name is Hope. Like he's the hope of men.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see like the sort of like the trickle effect or whatever,
Yeah.
domino, because Aragorn gives him hope and then he gives hope to mankind.
Yes. Yep. So she gives hope to him, and then he's able to give hope to the kingdom that he's supposed to lead, and even gives hope in a way to Rohan. And he gives hope to the Fellowship time and time again after Gandalf dies. Like he's the one who like tells them to keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's his character's role, is like to be the sign of hope.
Also very Christ-like.
And very Christ-like, and even like the willingness to like distraction. Like we can't win this battle on our own, but we can hope to like draw out the armies of Mordor, so that way Frodo has a clear path to complete his mission, which is also my mission.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, Aragorn,
Yeah.
beacon of hope or apostle of hope. Maybe we can call him apostle of hope.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
Yeah, let's go for it.
I mean, we make our own rules here.
Yes.
I didn't know it was that funny.
Well, it wasn't necessarily all that funny, but it's just like we're just gonna do whatever we want. Like
Yeah.
we're just gonna bend the rules of logic and do whatever we
Yeah.
please in this podcast. So if you can't follow along, that's why. So
Yeah. Your fault. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Oh, man. Oh, man.
yeah. And yeah. And even for the hobbits, you know, their hope is to get back to Shire home. You know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I wrote actually was, it's the hope of home, and I put underneath eternity, which is actually a future episode too. But yeah,
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, that hope for eternity, like that's what ultimately what home is. Like that's why we desire it so much. That's why we all love home. It's because it's a place of security, a place where we're loved. Ideally, like again, that's not always the case, but yeah. So that is, yeah.
Interesting.
Why?
So I'm still thinking about Arwen.
Go ahead. If you have something more, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm just thinking how like she was also able to bring Aragorn home in himself
Yes.
and in like the kingdom where he belonged. And yeah. That's all.
Yeah. It's
That was
beautiful.
just-
Yeah. 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 And I even think that, I think this is something that I commented just on the priests that I all really, really admire. Have like a very strong devotion to Our Lady. Like, even though I'm celibate, I still need like that feminine presence to like push me. And I realized that for priest, I mean, obviously, like there's a lot of women who help me in even everyday ministry. Like, you know, my mom will give me the business, you know, like
Yeah.
your mom will give me the business.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I do have like those influences within my life who do help me in that way. But I also realize that for priest, like the ones that I really admire are the ones, and like the ones that I was like, oh my gosh, like I really admire this one, this priest. Not that like, and there's a lot of good priests, but like, yeah, it's a strong devotion to Our Lady. Like there needs to be that mooring with her, that we need like that feminine presence, that motherly relationship in order to help us to carry out our masculine mission as priest, as pastors, you know, to bring about the kingdom of God, to not restore the kingdom of Gondor, but to proclaim the kingdom of God and and his righteousness. And so, sorry, that's just an interesting connection there. I just realized I already mentioned that. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. She draws the good out of you.
she draws the good out of us. Yeah, that is true. She does in many, many ways. So yeah, that's awesome.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Can you give any like examples in your own life where like you see like how the Blessed Mother has drawn the good out of you
Yeah. Gosh,
that you want to share?
Yeah. yeah. Like sometimes, yeah, that's obviously they can be a little, I mean, it's probably just like a recurring trope in like my own prayer. So this is the one I'll share because it's like something that happens time and time again. But just like on really, really rough days to where I'm just like, I'm a failure. I'm no good. Like, Lord, why did you bring me here? Why did you ask me to be a priest? Like, look at all these ways I'm incompetent. Look at these ways that I've failed. And it just feels like the world's, closing in around you. And I'll just imagine that that I run to her and I just like am a little boy and I just like plant my head in like her mantle and she just like bends down and just wraps me in a hug and just like assures me that I'm her beloved son and that she cares for me and that she loves me and that she knows that I'm good and that it's going to be okay. And there's like a number of other consoling words that I'm not quite as like comfortable sharing on the podcast, but so sorry.
That's fine.
but so just like that kind of experience of just like having somewhere to run in those times of need. So that one's been certainly strong. But then even like earlier, I've like pictured myself like in that role to where I've had a difficult decision or I'm going to preach about something that can maybe be difficult. And just like imagined Mary at like the wedding candle, like they have no wine. Like so often I think it's easy for me to think like, just keep the status quo, but it's like people are spiritually starving. They need the truth. They need my son. You're the only one that can give it to them. Do your job, like that kind of attitude there. So I've also experienced that. So those are like two instances, recurring ones that I've experienced in my own life. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us into some of your personal prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's important for people to experience that. Yeah. That it can be deeply personal because I think we feel guilty if it maybe gets that kind of, but it's good.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else you got?
Well, I also like a line that from like a video that I shared with you that it talks about what values are we willing to suffer defeat for? So hope also like sees beyond its own life. Like I even think that that's like another Gandalf quote. Like he's like, and this is like where they're talking about what to do with the ring and they're talking about, well, maybe we could hide it.
Yeah.
Like maybe we can just like kind of like, or maybe we can like take it to the Grey Havens and they can just drop it down into the sea. So that way it's like never found again. And he says, it is not our part here to take thought only for a season or for a few lives of men or for a passing age of the world. We should seek a final end of this menace, even if we do not hope to make one. Like hope sees beyond even our own lives. So it's not just like about us.
Yeah.
So then I think that helps to make sense of even like Boromir's sacrifice, Theoden's sacrifice, like their deaths and the story are like sad and it's like the end of their story, but they die not just like for their own hope, even though like it is kind of beautiful that Theoden like says, I can now go to the halls of my fathers where I will not be ashamed. Like I can go into eternity and face my creator.
Yeah.
But also like even that it's hope also has like, again, it lives differently, but it also sees differently. So it doesn't simply see for right now. And again, I think that's something that, that hopefully we can all live in. To not just simply like think about our own little like speck in time, but like how, and this is something I learned from like my internship pastor, Father Ruder. So he gets like, I don't know if he probably does not watch this because he's not a real like kind of podcast kind of guy, but he like, one thing I always admired is like, he was always thinking about like, what's going to make it easier for the next pastor. Mm-hmm. And he even always had like in mind, like because I was with him towards his end of his time at his assignment. And he just like was always thinking about what are things that I need to do that I can take the flack for that need to be done. So that way the next guy doesn't have to do it. Just like that sacrifice. Awesome. And I was like, gosh darn it. Like what a great example.
Yeah.
Like I was super blessed with that. So just like, I think that's even a sign of hope that it's like, I know that somebody else will continue on the work. Mm-hmm. I trust that the Lord will send a priest that will carry on what I've done. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, that's just awesome.
That is heroic virtue.
Yes, it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think too that like that,
Sorry, now I'm blowing my nose.
Sorry.
It's all right.
That this, just like reflecting on what you're saying, that it's not just like about us in our lifetime and what is going to live on for, and it's not like, well, like is my
legacy.
My legacy. Yeah. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But like, even just thinking about like the decisions we make every day.
Yeah.
And, like within our relationships at work or any other aspect of our lives, how that will trickle for a long time.
Yeah.
And the effect that can have in that. Yeah. Just going back to divine providence, that divine providence is working all of that out, but we need to be willing to cooperate.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, like that brings us back full circle to like the mercy thing, like, right. Mm-hmm. Like Bilbo's mercy of Gollum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ultimately determines the ending of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like one split-second decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seriously.
Determines the fate of Middle-earth.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Should we explain?
We should.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say who, but shout out to one of our viewers who commented on how frequently we just say yeah.
But we just want to make sure we're in agreement before we move on to the next point. So
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know if this is what it is for you, but I think part of it for me is just like filling up the space.
Yes, it is.
As I'm still like trying to process, but also confirming what you just said. And just,
so like I want to affirm you, so I don't want to leave you like in a moment of doubt.
Right.
But I'm also like trying to make like, you know, okay, I'm trying to process like
yes.
Stalling here for a second. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is definitely what I just did.
Yep. That's okay.
Yeah.
I don't expect it to stop anytime
No, I don't think so. But yeah, that is very, very much so true. So, because I just said it like 3 times there, and I realized that's how often I do it. So dang it. Now we just called it out, and everybody will notice it in future episodes. So
shoot.
Sorry.
Oh, well.
The show will go on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's next?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
I don't know. To be very honest, I took notes on this like a week ago, and so I don't really remember what I've got going on here.
I'll take a look and see if there's anything.
Yeah. There was one thing that I was thinking earlier. Oh, I think I wrote it down somewhere. It was when excusez-moi. It was okay. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find the actual quote, but it's basically when so Boromir just died.
Yeah.
The rest of the Fellowship recognize that Sam and Frodo are going off on their own,
Sure.
and they're like, and who I think it's Gimli says, yeah. Well, that's it. The Fellowship has failed, and Aragorn's like, pretty much says, no, we are not going to give up while we still have some strength left in us, or we're not going to leave behind Pippin and Merry.
Yeah.
And so,
not if we remain true to each other, reflecting what Galadriel said, actually.
oh,
She says, hope remains while the company is true.
yes.
And I think if I remember it correctly, I think Aragorn says, not if we remain true to each other.
Yes. Yeah. So it was just kind of like this, another like a beacon of hope that like, all right, things didn't go the way we thought they should have, or the way we thought that they were intended. Like this whole fellowship was put together for this purpose, to destroy the ring, right? Well, now we're split up. Like it's failed, but also no, it hasn't, because hope has a funny way, and divine providence has a funny way of like making like different turns off. Yeah.
Still contribute.
Yes.
Because then by the Fellowship breaking off, they're able to like put an end to Saruman. Mm-hmm. And then also it provides for them to be able to have the victory at the Pelennor Fields, and then provides for Aragorn to serve as a distraction to still help the end goal of the Fellowship succeed.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome insight.
Like, yeah. Yeah. It's just like, you have not failed in your mission just because it kind of looks like you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that like, yeah, in our spiritual lives, like the Lord provides other ways, always to follow him and to have hope for our own lives and to be hope to others. And the mission is not lost.
Yeah.
It's not over.
And I think that brings us back to even like the way that we look at it.
Yeah.
Like Gandalf pointing out, like, there's hope because this is not the way that Saruman thinks. Because I think at one point in the book he even says something like, let folly be our shield.
That's awesome.
Because this looks like craziness, but because of that, Saruman is such a logic, like he's so like, this is how everything works.
Yeah.
That because we're doing something so ridiculous, like he would never think that this is how we would go about it. And so that thought there is just like, whoa.
Yeah.
And we can even see that in our own lives. I can see how different mistakes I've made have ultimately made opportunities for me to grow, or even whenever I've like done something wrong and I've had to apologize, being forgiven has like been able to like strengthen the friendship,
Oh yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah.
And so seeing all of that at work within our own experiences should assure us that, you know, to use kind of like the common parlance phrase of, you know, like God can draw straight with the crooked lines. Like with the brokenness of our life, God can somehow put it all together and make it into like a beautiful masterpiece.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the mess that we make.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That is an encouraging thought.
That is an encouraging thought. So this is not putting you on the spot that you have to answer, but is there anything like that you would feel comfortable sharing from your own life?
About like messing up and then
Messing up, or even just like or even like a tragic event and seeing how God used it.
yeah.
Or not necessarily tragic, but just like something that seemed like it was the end of the world, or
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely I've definitely had an experience where I had to apologize to a friend after, messing something up. And it, like, in the moment, it's, like, really scary because it's, like, you feel like everything's on the line.
Yeah.
And also there's, like, a whole, like, host of other emotions, like, just, like, guilt and shame and, like, sadness and all kinds of things. And so it feels like everything's on the line and on just, like, on the verge of, like, despair. But it was met with love and forgiveness. And, like, I think the biggest fear in a moment like that, kind of like a specific situation like that where you have to apologize to a friend, like, the biggest fear is I'm going to lose this friendship.
Yeah.
Like, it's all my fault. And, like, I couldn't blame this person and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's all these negative things. But the main fear is I'm going to lose this beautiful gift that I've been given and never deserved in the first place. But it was met with, and actually, like, what I think resulted is, like, a deeper friendship and a deeper love and appreciation. And, so even that there where it's like, all right, it's just kind of like a baffling thought because it's like I know I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord did not want me to sin in that way, but I did, and he still used it. And he's still drawing good out of it.
Yeah.
And probably will actually for the rest of my life because of his ability to, what was that you said? Draw straight with crooked lines? Or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Because of his ability to do that and just... Again, just like the hope that comes from divine providence, working all things out. And that when it feels like we've abandoned our mission or we're shying away from it or like we just straight up failed, in the words of Gimli, the Lord kind of like gently pulls us back. Or sometimes maybe it doesn't feel so gentle, but it's like, no, it's not over. I'm not done with you, and just watch. You'll see. It will work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is an encouraging thought.
That is an encouraging thought.
I realized like halfway through saying that, I'm like, am I going to say that again? Really?
Well, but that's a good line.
It is a really good line.
It is a good line.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that does have to do with the process of our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Those who, to use a line that I keep on using, like those who hope live differently. Mm. To live differently often springs from how we think differently. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So encouraging thoughts. Yeah. That's even, is it Ephesians? Oh gosh, I can't remember. St. Paul says something like, say only the good things that men need to hear, things that will really help them, which, you can take as like nice, but I realize like that's not what he's saying. He's saying like, say only the good things that people need to hear. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, because that's like how you actually help someone. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, because I think that is, like the forgiveness of a friend. I think forgiveness does have one of those strong effects of a friend. It can be like a moment of hope or a moment where God shows us that he's not done.
Yeah.
But even like moments of despair in my own experience are like, this is all over. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily for any particular reason. It's just like the way that we sometimes think. Mm-hmm. Like, this has run its course. I messed up in this small way, so now like the entire project's just blown up. I made this decision that kind of backfired. And so then there's just like the thought of despair of like, it's all over. Because I messed up here, the entire project is just, it's kaput. But then the Lord can use like that experience, like one, obviously something's to be learned from it. But then also two, he uses that as a moment of humility to where like he can actually show you the right path forward that you just couldn't see before. Mm-hmm. And he shows you like the truth of like who you are. Like this mistake or this failure or this moment of despair doesn't define you. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, not only does it not define you, but I'm also going to pour into you and show you like how good you are in my sight. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and he can do that through all kinds of means too. I mean, like, again, as we're, I think the next episode is friendship. Mm-hmm. So we'll like that's one of those great ways in which he does show us our goodness.
Yeah.
Is I have friends and I'm weird. I can be like mean. I can be a bore, like, like all those different things you can like tell yourself about yourself. Mm-hmm. But then there's people who actually still want to hang out and still want to be a part of your life and still want to encourage you and want you to be a part of their journey. It's like, oh, like that's a sign that apparently they see something good in me. Mm-hmm. Otherwise they wouldn't want me to be like, obviously. Yeah. So I think that those ways of, just seeing like in moments of despair, whatever those look like, even like the death of a loved one can be kind of like that. Those are moments where I can see like a lot of, like I can see providence looking back on it, like, oh, he used this moment that maybe he didn't will, but he still used it to bring about good in my life and the life of others. Yeah. And so, that is an encouraging thought.
That is. And that just makes me think of, I don't know where it's from, but you probably will, but all things work for good for those who love God.
Yeah.
Where's that at? Well, now I'm putting you on the spot. We're just putting each other on the spot.
Yes, that's true. That's this episode. There and back again. Friends putting each other on the spot.
Dang it. We should have called it that.
Yeah. Well, we can change the name. I mean,
we'll make our own rules.
Make our own rules. The first episode, I called it A Friend's Tale. This time we called it A Journey. Next time we can call it that. So no big deal.
Yeah. No big NBD.
NBD. Yeah. All things work for good. I think that is, it's St. Paul. It might be Romans, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's Romans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's kind of been like a common thread throughout this whole conversation has been that good things come. Yeah. And so that's just been a verse that I've had to cling to,
Yeah.
To have hope, in moments of like sorrow or pain, and when the cross is really real, it's like, all right, all things work for good for those who love God.
Huh. Sorry, I just had another. Well, I don't know if it's an encouraging thought, but just like a thought that, like I think probably a lot of people have heard. Love is a choice. Mm-hmm. Like it's not a feeling. Mm-hmm. It's a choice. In the same way, after you just said, like, got to cling to hope, like you got to decide to cling to it. Yeah. It too is a choice.
Yeah.
Like it's something we simply have, like we have to choose it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it doesn't just happen to someone.
Mm-hmm.
We got to choose to see the world in that way.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I think that's something that is learned when you, have gone through some life.
Yeah. Some life.
Some life. Yeah. Because, that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
Choose hope.
Sweet.
Interesting. Okay.
Awesome sauce.
Awesome. Dope.
Sorry, did you have another thought?
Intermission number 2.
Yes.
I was like starting to develop a question in my brain which I guess would be like practically, how do you choose hope? And I know we've talked a whole lot about like how you see the world,
Yeah.
but do you have any sort of like insights there or some practicalities of choosing hope by day?
Day by day. Sorry. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we've been talking a lot about perspective. So like the way in which you decide to view the world determines that. So either you can look at the world as primarily something that's like out to get you. Like, right. So like, I mean, in some ways like it is, but you can also see like the hand of God in it. Like that he's going to pull you through all of it somehow.
Yeah.
So like you got to be willing to see his hand in the story, right? And that's even something I think Tolkien does rather well in like Lord of the Rings. It's not like divine intervention in the ways that you would imagine. Like there's not some sort of like some Deus ex machina, which is like kind of a common like that's sorry. It's like a story trend like where there's like this one just like sweeping thing that happens that like ends the entire thing. Like it does happen with the destruction of the ring, but it doesn't happen in the normal way that you would expect.
Gotcha.
So it's not like, you know, if you've watched like, you know, the Marvel movies, it's not like Iron Man stealing the gauntlet and like putting it on himself and then snapping. It's not just like some magical moment, but instead it's like a series of small choices that you can see like divine providence at work at different moments. Like the ring betraying Isildur and then passing to Gollum. And then it betraying Gollum and seeking to get back to its master and it's picked up by Bilbo. And then Bilbo being willing to let it go and give it to Frodo. Like those moments to where evil was actually at work, good like slipped in the most unexpected manner possible. But that's something that you got to see it in that way.
Yeah.
You can just view it as accidents. Or you can choose to look at it as moments of providence. But it doesn't necessarily look like providence if you want to be skeptical. Skepticism is still allowed. And I think that's the same way that we can like view life. Either we can be a skeptic or you can choose to see providence at work. And that's ultimately is a choice because God doesn't want to betray our freedom.
Right.
So that's one aspect of it. But I think then along with that is like using your past as a template or even the stories of the saints, church history, whatever. Like you can look back and see like, okay, things have been really bad before. There are saints that had the same struggles I did. Saints who struggled with gluttony, pride, anger, lust, and just like all sorts of sins that people deal with. And you can see that they overcame it by God's power. And so we can use their examples to assure us that God can do the same for us.
Yeah.
So experience / history or story of what's come before us, that can restore hope and that can instill in us hope. Yeah, I think that's like a major part of it. And I think also having like the right group of people around you can determine what you see.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have any practical ones?
I was asking you.
I know, but now I'm turning back to you. So, because you asked the question because, well, you might have an extra insight or something to add to it.
I think kind of going back to just like perspective, maybe like a specific part of perspective is like what we talked about with like the desire to go home, the desire to be at home, and just like a reminder that we were made for heaven and that that is a hopeful perspective to have.
Yeah.
And like one that I feel like it's so easy to go like an entire day without thinking about, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, like, am I thinking about the most important things? Am I seeing with, eyes of eternity? You know, like, are my eyes on the prize, so to speak? Yeah. What?
Well, sorry, I just realized that we're in November, which is like a month dedicated to the last things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So like well, obviously like praying for the dead is a thing.
Yeah.
But also like it's a month that we're oftentimes invited to focus on the last things: heaven, hell, death, and judgment. So heaven, yeah. So sorry, just
That's
when you
awesome.
said heaven, I was like,
okay.
oh, that's right.
That's awesome.
That our deepest hope is heaven, yeah.
Yeah.
So to draw it all back up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Woo.
There's providence at work.
There you go.
See, just even with like a dope like me, you know, like
Dope.
a dope. Like, isn't there like one of the seven dwarves and
Dopey.
Yeah. So I figured that.
Which I don't understand. That word has
Well,
too many meanings.
well, but like a lot of words that mean like cruel or like are oftentimes like people used to say bad to indicate good.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it's not uncommon to use
True.
antonyms.
True.
Is that, I don't know if that's actually the proper term. Some grammar person will probably get on me. Or,
I think it is.
yeah. So
Okay.
moving on. Sorry.
I think that was about all. Just, and again, it's not very practical. This is why I ask questions about practicalities, is because I need ways to practically apply things to my life. Because, like, as beautiful as that more abstract is, or like, as beautiful as it is, like, it's really hard for me to plant it in my life.
Sure.
Unless it's like, so, yeah. So that's all I've got. And it's not very practical because I'm searching for the practicals from you.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. But that was a good thought, just on perspective of,
Okay.
yeah. Because it can be, our thoughts are some of the most practical things because, again, it governs what we do.
True.
Because the Lord even tells us in the Gospels, right, that it's not what comes from outside of man, but what comes within that defiles. Within man comes licentiousness. Yeah, all the words that he used there. I can't remember all those, but yeah.
What we think about is what we love.
So what we love, and what we love, we ultimately play out in action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think just like, this perspective that you were talking about, and a a gaze towards heaven, and also, okay, it's November, as we've mentioned, like, so November 1st, sorry, I don't know why I just threw a random like in there. Like. That's me filling the space with my trying to process. November 1st, we celebrated the Feast of All Saints.
Yes.
Solemnity of All Saints. And so I think something I'm kind of like trying to have, so like I read a book.
Yeah.
And it kind of has like reawakened me to, like the angels and like, I guess also like the saints too, but just like the help of the angels, the heavenly hosts, and just like the invisible reality that we forget or gloss over or maybe don't fully believe, and how powerful and how beautiful it is, and that like that perspective can change your whole dang life. You know? Sure. Yeah. Sorry. That probably should be its whole own like thing. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's, but that is true. That, I mean, because I think even at Mass, that's something, a perspective that we so often forget. Mm-hmm. It's like eternity dwells there, but we don't act like it. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm guilty of that. That's not like a, that's not like a finger in your chest kind of thing. That's like a, that's like, oh man, like, yeah, I oftentimes forget that, that when I celebrate Mass, like I try to make it so often about like, okay, I need to be prayerful, which I need to be. I need to be reverent, which I need to be. But I also forget that like Mary, all the saints, and like the heavenly host is there. And like, how often do I ask them to be like, hey, help me out a little bit? Like I'm doing something that's like impossible, like, and like I need their aid, and I don't like turn to them. And how often do we struggle to like focus or, like I remember at the seminary, like a priest on All Saints Day talking about, like in early in the morning, I can tell we struggle to chant. How often do we ask like Saint Cecilia or like King David for their intercession to help us in those moments? It's like, oh man,
Never thought of that.
like
one.
never thought of that before. Like that was a great practical insight, like spiritual, but practical of how often we forget about that spiritual reality, which is just as real.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I'm just thinking that that's also like, just a reminder too of like, so calling on like the angels and the saints for aid to give us hope.
Yes.
And that should be like what our friendships are too.
Yeah.
A willingness to,
Yeah.
and you will bless your friends if you're courageous enough to ask for them to give you some hope.
Yeah.
Like that is sorry. My mind's going in a lot of places, and also I'm going to blame it on the time change, but I'm also kind of powering off at the same time. So.
Yes, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
No, that all makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Hope. Because that's even like something I try to do is like take patron saints even. Well, we forgot to mention, thanks to Julia Monin at Journeys Revealed Ministries for allowing us to use her space, her camera, her microphones, and just being generous enough to give us access so that way we have a place to record the podcast. So that's number one. So they have great stuff. If you've not read The World is Noisy, God Whispers, her autobiography, it's great. And then there's also a few other people that are working with her. Well, I think one or two. Is it one or two?
I think one that works here, but maybe I think another one that should,
Yeah, like, so there's like other stories published as
Oh,
well.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
So like how Providence
There's-
has worked in their life to bring it back there.
yes.
So,
Oh, yes.
So yeah, rather fitting, but also even talking about different patron saints like behind us. So I guess I was thinking about doing a different episode, but also a shout out to my parishioners, Sarah Collier, who painted this up here, different patrons of Journeys Revealed. And so speaking of the saints that we can take as patrons and that we can take as friends, they have many here at Journeys Revealed, and I have many of my priesthood, actually a few that in common there. So, because Therese, one of my favorites, Anthony of Padua, patron of my preaching, because I preach out of the text, so I need sometimes help regaining my thoughts, finding my thoughts in my head. So
I don't know how you do it.
yeah, so he helps me with that, and Francis de Sales, patron of pastoral charity. So like I've taken different saints as like patrons of different aspects of my ministry, and so I think that things like that are like important in our own lives to maybe have different saints that you go to for different moments. Because something I learned from short stints with the missionaries of charity is they're like, no, you don't go to them for that saint for this. This is a saint you go to for that. Like they have specific saints they go to for different intercession on different needs. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And they become your friends.
And they
Saints
become your friends. Yeah.
And friendships are signs of hope.
Friendships are a sign of hope, which will be the next episode. So stay tuned.
So how we should like close? Oh, never mind. It's not important.
Okay.
It's not.
Okay.
Trust me on this one.
Okay. I'll trust you. So did you have anything else or?
I don't think so.
Well, if you stayed with us on the journey for this long, thank you very much. But I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, that was great conversation.
That was a great conversation. So I hope that some of you get something out of it, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Farewell.
Bye.